for people who are listening today, if you ever have questions or you have some concerns with your own program, your team, yourself, and you would like us to maybe touch base on a specific topic sometime during our webinar series, please let us know, because we would love to take that time to share with you some of our insights with any questions you may have, and potentially address any questions that might be surrounding yourself, your own performance, your team, your program, whatever it may be.
Jay, can you see it?
Peter mentioned,
Can you see the PowerPoints?
Yeah, looks
Here?
great. Yeah, looks fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, why don't we get started?
Sure, let's begin. So I just want to take the time to introduce myself to everybody. I'm Jason Galea. I'm one of the co-founders of Headset Sports. And a few years ago, Dr. Peter and I put together a comprehensive program that helps athletes and teams. And what we really want to do in helping teams is we really want to help with teaching skills and empowering athletes to take control of their mental skill sets and feel like they had control, and give them the opportunities to not only just improve upon them, but at the same time help coaches be able to relate to some of the issues that they might not feel comfortable talking about, or get to know their teams even better. And all of a sudden, as we started comprising all of the information that we've had from 10 years each of working with teams and athletes and coaches individually, we were able to comprise what we're talking about today. That's Headset Sports. And everybody who you talk to understands the importance of mental skills training. Everybody understands that. And we've now created a device that brings together a comprehensive program and system so that athletes can learn how to take control of building their mental skills sets. So today what we're going to talk about is mental skills training. We're going to talk about the 5 major ingredients, which we refer to as our pillars for success. We'll talk to you about those 5 ingredients. We'll talk about 2 in particular today. And then we're also going to talk to you a little bit about some of the actual programs that we give in our program as a whole to athletes to work on weekly. And that headset exercises are what we refer to as our WOWs, our workout of the weeks. And you'll see our dashboard that explains how you're doing week to week as well as month to month. So with that, we hope that we'll be able to generate some questions for all of you to share with us so that we can maybe provide more clarity as to how Headset Sports works. So if you get any questions that pop up, do us a favor, please. Just put it in the chat room, and either Peter and I will jump on it. I think everyone here has done a great job already with muting your phone or your app device, whatever it may be that you're using. If you haven't, please do so. I know myself, I always forget to do that, and in the middle of a question, my phone rings. So if you haven't already done so, please take the time to just put your phone on mute or put your computer on mute, and we'll get to questions as quick as we can. So with this, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce my partner, the one and only Dr. Peter Papadopoulos. Peter, if you got a few seconds here, please jump in and tell the crowd about you.
For sure. Thanks, Jay. As Jay mentioned, so Jay and I are the co-founder of Headset Sports. Myself and Jay are both practicing sports sites, just in different places. So I'm in Toronto, Canada, and I work out of a few different sports medicine clinics. So that's where my private practice is housed, and I've been happy to do so for a little over 15 years. One is called Toronto Semi, another one is called the Sports Clinic, and the third one's called Athletes Care. And I work with athletes at various levels. Primarily, those are a little bit older, 18 and above, a little bit higher level, those higher level amateur athletes, pro athletes, university athletes. And I also teach at 2 different universities. One is York University, and I'm a professor in psychology there, and also the University of Guelph at Humber College. Those 2 schools have come together in Toronto, and I also teach at Sheridan College, and all psychology-oriented classes, including sport and exercise. And as Jay mentioned, for the mental skills part, we think it's a pretty important time because our conversations with athletes are a little bit different now. And we still talk about pressure, and that's an important piece to our conversation. Still, athletes that we work with individually, but also for athletes that we work with through Headset. And the pressure conversation has changed a little bit, where before it was a lot of these conversations around pressure and performance. So winning or performing to your potential, whatever that potential is for your sport. But then you have all those external factors that are wrapped around it. So maybe some pressure from teammates, coaches, significant others, could be family members, could be advisors or agents, could be recruiters, or pressure from opponents and spectators. So we still had this conversation a lot about athletes, but it's more performance oriented, where with COVID-19 and the closing of sport and now the return of sport. So I know that we come from different areas of the world for our conversation together today, and athletes and teams that are in different time frames in regards to returning to sport. But for the most part, athletes are returning and teams are returning. And the pressure now in the conversations Dr. Jane are having are a little bit different. They're a little bit more internal. It does not mean that the pressure wasn't felt internally before, but now it's more the parts about doubt, right? So it's a pressure of the unknown, and people are trying to navigate what was there before. So you hear a lot of athletes talk about what was there, and some athletes didn't get their season in. So when you talk to an athlete when their season was cut short, it's a different conversation in regards to COVID-19. And for some, they were seniors, senior high school, seniors in college. For Canadians, it's our fourth year or fifth year in university or college, and that's a different conversation to have with athletes. There's also that future. What do I do now? When is my sport coming back? For some Canadian universities and colleges, they're taking the fall off. They might be coming back to training, but that competitive season is on hold. I know the Ivy Leagues from the U.S. in regards to university athletics, they're putting a hold on it until at least 2021. Same with Ontario, where I'm from in Canada. The entire university athletics have put their sport on hold without a specific return to sport date. So that's an important piece in regards to the pressures that athletes are feeling. And they're feeling it a lot on their own. There has been the social distancing. They haven't been able to train with coaches, teammates. They haven't been able to see these coaches and teammates who have a pretty important impact on their development as an athlete. So this is the new normal. And for those who have come back to play, and maybe we can hear from you today, what is that like? And for coaches that Dr. J and I have been talking to, it's a new normal. For hockey players in Canada, it's a smaller amount of people on the ice at one time. Right now, it's 10 athletes, skaters on the ice with 2 coaches, but they get dressed in the hallways or in the foyer of the arena. And then they have to wear their masks, and then they take off their masks and have to put it somewhere. And then afterwards, they had to put their masks back on, get changed outside. So it's not that environment where athletes are kind of where they were before. And for many of us as coaches, athletes, and people in sport, we know the importance of being around others, even for independent sport athletes like tennis players or golfers. So that social distancing isolation piece, it is the new normal. And as people are experiencing this new normal, they're going to experience all these different feelings, emotions, these new behaviors that they're not used to. So I think it's an important part for us to talk about and have a conversation about. And we'll do this over the summertime and maybe beyond based on where sport is. Yeah. So Dr. J mentioned we're going to talk about these pillars. For Dr. J and I and the rest of the group at Headset, there are 5, and we'll get to those. But before I do, I just want to give an example of how there is difference. And I picked this from LinkedIn, which was a USA Today article. and it talks about the importance of mental health for players coming back from the NBA. So right now, the NBA is back. They are practicing and will soon start to play. But in one article that I found that was sent by a colleague of mine from USA Today, it just had little snippets and quotes from these NBA players, who a lot of them are these star players who are feeling stressed. And the NBA have increased their mental health resources for their players. So good on them. There are a lot of mental health practitioners and sports psychs and people in counseling who know sport who are there. But here are a couple of athletes that I just picked from that article. Gordon Hayward from the Boston Celtics, a guard, who's been through a lot in his career based on injuries and all these highs and lows. Indicated that it definitely is a stressful time for everyone. And Bradley Beal, who has been outspoken at time in regards to mental skills and just life in the NBA, says, yeah, it's different for him and others. They can't leave this bubble, right? So they can't order the food that they want that they're used to. They can't do the activities that they're used to in regards to a pre-practice or competition once they get there. So it's a new sort of environment for them overall. And then it's nice at the end, Bradley Beal mentioned that it probably is helpful that they have some supports because it's going to be different for everyone. So just to add some kind of context and texture to the new normal for athletes that we're working with and we are part of their lives. So those 5 pillars that Dr. J mentioned, I'm just going to go over them quickly and they'll be a major theme for us. So one is called awareness. For awareness, we'll often talk to it as being about awareness of yourself, your strengths, development areas, but also being aware of how your body functions when feeling pressure. The one in the middle is called regulation or stress management, is how you handle the stress and pressure and emotions. Number 3, top left, is confidence. This is your genuine ability or capability to take on the challenges or pressure in your sport. Resilience is your ability to cope and come back. And then motivation. We'll talk a little bit more about the internal or intrinsic motivation piece, but we'll also, as time goes on, add some external pieces. So this is a nice sort of slide to remember. And we'll bring it up again, Dr. J and I, because we'll be talking about these components, these pillars. But each one of these have layers. So we're only going to talk about certain layers of certain pillars today. So the first pillar that I want to get to is called awareness. And at the top is our definition of awareness. For me, in private practice and on headset, for me, this is a foundational mental skill, and a mental skill that is not always taken on by athletes. So I think this is a nice place to start. It is a foundational piece for all of the other 4 mental skills that we will talk about through our webinar series. So this ability to be aware of and understand oneself. Also, understand how your body reacts to pressure. Third PowerPoint slide, and I highlighted it in red. For us now, a takeaway for this return to play that I think is very important and having many conversations on is the acknowledgement and acceptance that facilitates awareness. So I'm going to go into both of these a little bit more. So the acknowledgement piece is how that athlete is feeling at any given time with this new normal. Often it has emotions, feelings, and cognition. So being able to then label and then understand these different components as an athlete, very important. And I have a slide that comes right afterwards I'm going to get into that I think is going to be pretty helpful. Number 2 is, and you have to do this quite quickly as an athlete, and then as a coach, if there are coaches on with us, is helping the athlete to accept it. So all athletes, I haven't heard one athlete over the spring or summertime up until now not be able to then speak to the challenges of COVID-19 and the shutdown of sport. Not one, right? So from young and old at different levels of competition, all of them that I've talked to have mentioned that it is challenging. But it doesn't mean that that athlete is going to experience it the same way as the other athlete. So all athletes are human beings. They're going to feel certain, they're going to think certain ways based on certain environments, but it's important for that athlete to be able to accept it in order to move forward, right? And Dr. J is going to take that moving forward piece in just a little bit. But before he does, I have this document that I use with athletes and also coaches. So this is an emotions mood wheel. It's got a lot of information on it. I'm not going to go in too much depth, but I think it's a nice one to be able to start to think about as an athlete and a coach. I'm going to go towards the middle and make my way outside. So in the middle, we have 6 basic emotions. And across cultures, people talk about these 6 basic emotions. They're basic because they're universal. Number 2, they're felt in your body, and they're very quick, primitive. So they're anger, disgust, sadness, happiness, surprise, and fear. As you are having conversations with athletes, if you're a coach or support person, if you are an athlete, you can often narrow it down to these 6 basic emotions. There are more. We'll talk about them in the future. They're called self-conscious emotions: guilt, embarrassment, pride, envy. But we're going to start with these 6. But it's the external or outside layers of the ring that are going to be pretty important for us as we continue to talk. So we have this middle ring of these 6, but then we have precursors. And every one of these 6 have specific precursors that might influence that emotion. So as you start to feel these as an athlete, and you will, as you start to feel these as a coach or listen to them, and you will go through this, it's important to then be able to recognize what they are. So if it's fear, you have to label it and then think, why am I feeling this way? So it could be that you feel the outer ring. Maybe you are feeling anxious. Maybe you are feeling a little bit more submissive. You're just returning to play. For surprise, you have other precursors. Anger, you might have aggressiveness and frustration. So they're all important. They're all the human aspect of awareness. But it's important to move to the outer rings. And as you have these outer rings, you have even ones that influence those that I talked about. So being threatened for anger, maybe you feel jealous or insecure. So I highly recommend when we kind of give this to you in a recording, if you want to take a picture of it, start to be able to label and listen to on your own or to your athletes, because that's going to be able to have those next steps of being able to, okay, I feel this way because now I can do something with it. And that's that next part in regards to the presentation, but also to coming back to sport that I think is going to be imperative as athletes develop their mental skills and return to play. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. J, and he's going to take on the connection with resilience and awareness.
So earlier today, folks, maybe about an hour ago, I wrapped up another call similar to this with an organization that if we have any athletic directors on the call today, I'm going to give you a resource here. And there's a good colleague friend of mine who created a program called nationaladresource.com. And on this call earlier this morning, there was a little over 100 ADs from all around the country on this call sharing their fears, their anxieties, and their stresses. Here in the United States, it's a cluster of confusion going on right now. And there's tons of emotion, and there's a ton of people feeling that they have no power and they have no control. And they don't know what to tell their athletes. They don't know what to tell their coaches. They don't know what to tell their parents of the athletes, how the season is going to move forward, if there is even going to be a season. And one of the biggest things that they are trying to communicate to their athletic team of coaches and their teams individually as players is this pillar of resilience. We're going to get through it. Resilience, as you can see, is the ability to cope with stress and future anxieties and be able to overcome. Can you pick yourself up when things have gone awry? One of the assignments that we have within our program is called the 3 C's. And this is where we start talking about controlling the controllables, your commitment to a goal, challenge versus threat, What are all of these? These are the things that we are going through right now as coaches, athletic directors, athletes. We're having to do these three things today, right now. But more importantly, we have to create the structure so that we can implement what Peter was talking about a few seconds ago of that awareness so that we can gain a focus to overcome, if that makes sense. Rather than hoping that we'll be able to create a plan for success, what Headset Sports does for you is it provides you with that plan. And not only does it provide you with that plan, but it provides you with a customized plan for what you need specifically, not only as a coach, not a program director, but as an athlete. But as a coach and as a program director, it creates separate customized programs for all of your athletes to have individual plans for success. So I put that out there for everyone to understand that when we talk about awareness and we talk about resiliency skills, these are the things that we need to be aware of and to empower our athletes with today. And being able to control the controllables, such as knowing that you can go work out, you can go for a run, you can stay in shape, you can stay on your game, you can review game tape, you can review highlights of things that went well or maybe not so well from the year before, season before. These are things that you can do. These are all the things that surround us. And a lot of times when we don't realize that we can take control of these things and take a negative and make it a positive, we don't realize the control that we have. And it's important that we explain to athletes that you have more control than you really understand. Too many times, athletes believe that what they need to do to be successful is to focus on their opponent. Focus on their opponent and what their opponent might do to them and what their opponent's strategy might be and combating what their opponent is going to do. Very little time is spent as coaches and program people explaining to athletes, this is what you do really well. This is what you do really well, and maybe they should be worried about what we're going to do. So being able to understand what it means to control your controllables is a huge thing. And if you can just focus on one thing at a time, we can easily start implementing a strong sense of confidence that our ability to control things like your workout, your sleep, your eating behaviors, maybe some of the things that you do that are specialty training for what you do are truly all the things that you really need to do to be successful. When we understand that we have more control, that's when we can overcome the things that feel overwhelming. All of this, what is this? This is commitment. This is being able to say, rather than running around and hoping that things will fall into place, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to relax, and I'm going to assess. I'm going to assess the things I can control, the things that I'm feeling, and I'm going to now say to myself, I'm putting forth the commitment to simply attack one element of my game each and every day. I'm going to improve one element of my game every day. Well, what we can do with this through Headset Sports is we can track our progress of how we're doing. We implement SMART goals, SMART process goals, which is imperative for an athlete to realize that when you put the time and effort into something, you truly are going to reap the rewards in the back end of this. So for example, there's a lot of sports right now that are really worried about, are we going to have a season? It might end up becoming a training season. And if that is the case, what are we going to do? Are we going to put our head down and kick rocks for a year? Or are we going to turn around and say, all right, how can we take control of what we're doing? Not too long ago, I spoke to an athletic director of a huge Division I school. And one of the things that he passed on to all of the ADs that were in this call of high school programs and performance programs was, even if your season turns into a training season, you can still make amazing things happen. We as college coaches, athletic directors, rely on club sports, sports directors, coaches to send us film on athletes and give us write-ups on athletes. You still will have the ability to do all that. You still will have the ability to take your skill sets and market them to help move yourself forward. Do you know that? Are you aware of that? All of this is what can help us breed more confidence into our athlete. If our know, not be told, but just know, if we can explain to them, show them, talk to them, communicate with them, and let them see that there is a future for them, that there is a season, that there is good that can come out of what we're dealing with right now as a society across the board. This is where that genuine belief can come into effect that allows positivity and optimism to reign supreme. Because you know what? What my coach is saying is truthful. Perfect example. No matter how well a Division I college football player does during his season, they still have something called pro days on top of that. What is a pro day? That pro day is a chance for elite teams in the NFL to come in, meet that individual, watch his skill sets individually, talk to him, find out what kind of person he is on and off the field, and then get an up close interview with the person so we get this one-on-one relationship, not to mention have a face-to-face with coaches as well. And this goes on in all sports for athletes that are going to move on. When we can explain that truth and break it down in actuality of segments of how it's going to go, this is where we start taking control of the controllables. So with that, I would say to you, let's start talking more to our athletes. Let's start talking more to our athletes about the positive that could come out of the season ahead, even if it becomes a training season. And when we talk about 3 good things to the 1, that's our 3-to-1 rule. Can we make 3 huge improvements in our game to say 1 negative? We're going to be a great team. Can we create 3 parts of a conversation that talk to our athletes about the things they're doing well, the things they're improving upon, and the things that they're going to be able to do in the future, to the 1 negativity that might be in place today? Now you're building a true, strong pillar of an athlete on your team. And that's what you want to be able to do when we're building up confidence. So, Pete, I'll get you to jump in on this because I've been rambling a lot here, but we have a great visual here where we talk about becoming a bricklayer in terms of the performance and mastery. You want to elaborate a little bit more on this?
Yeah, in what you're saying in regards to that tracking piece, and I think for a lot of athletes in different sports, they're going to come back to train before they perform, and I think that's a good thing in regards to just a perspective to have, the athlete's perspective, the coaches, the support that they have within and outside the team. Because when we come back, there are going to be some people who are a little bit rusty, haven't performed in a while. So thinking about the mastery part or the skill development piece will be a very helpful perspective to have. It does not mean that all sports will come back to having a period of time just to train. An example would be the National Hockey League. You have right now a few weeks of practice, they're getting ready to playoffs. Where other sports, they may have, as you're saying, Jay, a longer period of time. Maybe it's a whole fall season to get ready. So with both scenarios, be it you have a longer time for skill development or shorter, I think that mastery perspective at the very beginning is key, and that builds confidence. So we have that, as you mentioned, Jay, that symbol, that picture at the bottom of the bricklayer. And for work that we do within Headset, we see athletes as bricklayers. So you have to start with 1 brick and then build a foundation and then build upon the next level and then the next level until that wall is built, right? But that comes with work and tracking. And from my experience, the best athletes, they track how they do in their sport before COVID-19 and they will afterwards. So to me, putting in that work, and then as a coach, you can tell your athletes and have it as a cultural piece that those should be the wording. Hey, we have to have the 3-to-1 rule, right? After practice, you are on headset, going to go and track your practice, or they're going to put it into their phone, or they're going to write it down if they're still writing. Athletes have to review, and that's where the genuineness piece that you mentioned, Jay, is so important. So when you ask an athlete, right, what is genuine? Like, where's your confidence from? That athlete can say, here you go. It is on this date at this time, and here's my 3. And over time, there will be patterns. And that athlete, I just know from my experience, the athlete goes, there it is. I have improved this skill over this time, and I can rely on it. And that's genuine confidence. And that's what separates athletes and will be a nice opportunity for athletes to get that mental edge, that mental strength at any time during this road to back to sport. And once again, different sports will have different periods of time, but I think this 3-to-1 rule will be handy the entire time.
To your point, Peter, for everyone listening, just to throw another point out, we often, Peter and I, get asked questions of who do you see using headset sports, and what is the feedback that you're getting, and can you tell us more about what it's doing for teams? And as Peter mentioned, the best of the best are the ones that are using it thoroughly. And if there's one consistent, it doesn't matter what sport it may be, the players who seem to be at the top of their game or want to be at the top of their game, the ones who are maybe the elite, your go-tos on your team, I'm telling you, our research, our proof of product shows that the best of the best on each team, they're the ones who are using it thoroughly. But what's also kind of funny about this is the naysayers who, are the ones that you got to constantly be encouraging throughout the season. Come on, let's try. It's amazing to hear coaches talk about how when that athlete even just put in a little bit of effort into using headset, improved so immensely throughout this season that it's almost funny because the athlete themselves doesn't even realize it. So one of the things to share is that we often get asked, can we do more? Can we do more? Because the people who are really into it, they understand about the power that you can get in your game, in your life, by, as Peter mentioned, embodying this and developing that brick layer mentality, one skill at a time, building that strength foundation of confidence within. What we find is there are some that want more and more. And to be really blunt, we have to explain to them this is like building a muscle. And when you build that muscle of confidence, that muscle of insight, that muscle of resilience, awareness, emotional regulation, it's going to get stronger over time. But I just want to share that with people who are on the call today, because you might be thinking the same thing. Well, how does it work? And what is kind of the feedback you've gotten and whatever. And I think it's really important. And I think Peter's point of that building the bricks, it fit in perfect to sharing that little antidote there. So thanks for Pete for setting that up.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And as we mentioned, headset at different times, and some people are familiar with it from our social media and website. And Jay and I have talked about it, but headset is a program that we created, Jay and I, with the help of other sports sites, athletes, coaches, athletic directors. So very intelligent and experienced people in sport. But what we wanted to do was to have a customized application and system. And for us, we are data driven. So for us, an important piece is that we will use data to build a customized mental skill program for every athlete. So none of us here today, if you were to be on headset, or for those that are currently on headset, you will go through it differently than everyone else. And that's important, be it when returning to play, but even before, and as people come back, that no two athletes are the same. We should not treat them physically the same. They all have different needs. the same thing should be undertaken mentally. So for Dr. J and I, it's the customization piece and the data-driven piece that we can track athletes differently over time. No two athletes will be the same. And as Jay mentioned, there's going to be development over time, but the athlete and the team has to be able to see where there are differences over time. And that is the benefit of the system.
Yes.
So,
You know, as we go into this next slide here that you're going to talk about, you can't, I can't help but say this because you sparked something inside of me. One of the things that we knew in the beginning of pulling this together is athletes can be very aware of how they're feeling and what's going on inside. And that can sometimes be empowering and sometimes it can be confusing. At the same time, you start realizing that there's things that you need to develop and want to share. And the question becomes, who do you do that with? Who do you do that with? Do you go to your position coach who might talk to your head coach and misinterpret what you're saying? And all of a sudden the head coach feels, well, this player just doesn't feel confident, so he's not starting on Saturday. The ability to have a customized program that allows you to take control of what's going on in your life, in your game, this is what we tried to put together and have put together to address that athlete situation of how do I take control of my game without risking someone misinterpreting how I'm feeling, and next thing you know, now I'm not even playing. If that makes sense. And I would ask anyone who's listening today in our chat box, if you've had something like that happen to you, please share it. If you have questions about this, please share it, because any questions you may have with the things that were thrown at you today, please share it, because this is fun for us.
yeah, and Jay, as you mentioned, so what you see here on this PowerPoint slide is a picture of what's called our athlete dashboard. So Headset is athlete oriented. Every athlete that registers for Headset, they'll have their Headset dashboard, we call it, and then also what's called their mental expertise page. So the dashboard that you will see here is a place where athletes can track their development over time. And for us, it's data driven. So we have what are called points. So Headset points. So you can track your points for the week, for the month, your overall points. And that's important to see where you're developing your mental skill. And for us, as mentioned several times today, we look at 5 different pillars: the awareness, regulation, self-confidence, resilience, and motivation. And we track that weekly, and we actually also track that monthly. And we call these our pillar gauges. So when an athlete is performing and engaging with the system, their pillar gauges will change. So as you can see here, for the monthly, just an example, that this athlete, there are some changes based on their engagement with the system. And it's nice to see where you are having strengths. There's that build up. And you can see, okay, what's a little bit lower too, so you can build that to catch up to the other ones. So that data-driven part. The mental expertise page, we also call it the me page, is on the left-hand side. And this is where all of the activities, these mental activities that Headset sends based on the engagement. So once again, no two athletes are the same, and they will be given mental activities, these interventions that are specific to them at any given time. And then we will give the athlete notifications. So we tell the athlete what is needed now. And if we can relate it back to this health concern that we're going through and then coming back from, this is imperative, right? So the athlete has to know what to work on. They can't figure it out. It's hard for the coaches to help the athlete to figure it out. So at Headset, we've done it for you. It's having a sports psych or mental performance consultant in the palm of your hand. We have our Headset app through the Apple Store and Google Play. You can register through our website, and you will get this portal as an individual. For Jay and I and all of us at Headset, we wish we had this when we were playing, that we can log into Headset. We want it every day. But it's just giving that accessibility. So we think especially now, this is going to be a very important tool or resource for athletes as they return to play.
Huge.
Next, we have what's called a team dashboard. So this is for a team or organization that they have access to. The team dashboard is for the team or organizational stakeholder. Could be a coach, could be a manager, could be a sports science professional, could be an administrator. And this is where they're able to track the mental skills and the adherence to these activities on headset by individual players. And a team organization are all linked through this team dashboard. The team dashboard, you do not see what the athlete is working on. So you don't know if Jason or Peter are higher or lower in any of these 5 pillars, but you do know if the athletes in your team or in your organization, if they are doing the work. And at the back end, because it's data driven, Headset's able to give reports to coaches for the team as a whole at any given time. It could be weekly, it could be 2 times a month, it could be monthly. We can engage with the data that your team has. So we are digging deeper into what a group is undertaking and how they're feeling and how they are thinking. So for us, this is imperative, and for the coaches and teams that are currently and have used headset, this is very important because then they could help out and then be narrowing down their interventions for their team. Because maybe their team needs a little bit more resilience. Maybe they need a certain part of self-confidence. Maybe there's a certain part of awareness, which could have been what we talked about, that the team is a little bit lower on, that the team has to be able to increase.
Yes.
So, yeah, once again, the team, you don't see the individual portal. These are 2 different portals. For the individual athlete, the team stakeholder doesn't see this. And this is a team dashboard. The individual athletes don't see this.
And I just want to jump in for any coaches or program directors that might be on this call right now. I'm more than positive that you understand and realize the power of what this can do at this special or the specific time in our world today. We're talking about teams that could be fragmented because of COVID-19. We're talking about training sessions that could be fragmented. And the ability for you as a coach or a program director to be able to have an overview of what's going on with your team throughout the week, throughout the month, how valuable would that be? Especially if you're dealing with competitive athletes in a competitive program. This would be essential to know. And not only to know what's going on, but then to also then be able to have that deeper insight of what kind of conversations you might want to have if your team is fragmented, if your team is spaced out because of this entire COVID situation, that when you get together and you do your Zoom hangouts and your Zoom workouts and your Zoom meetings, as a lot of teams and programs are doing all over North America, all over the world, how beneficial would that be for you to have an even deeper conversation? Because you know that a majority of your team is lacking confidence. They might be lacking motivation, right? Or maybe in the opposite direction. Now you know that it's not just going to be a dart that you're throwing in with your eyes closed in terms of conversation pieces. You're getting to the heart of what's going on right now, today, with your team.
All right, so we are going to tie things together. And again, if you have any questions that you want to put forward in regards to maybe the challenges of coming back, teams that you are leading, if you are an athlete, or if you are going to be coming back to sport, please feel free to use that chat function on Zoom, and we can kind of take care of those. So we'll be manning those before the end today. But before we conclude, for Headset and Jay and I, we are as a group on social media. So we have Instagram live talks on Thursday afternoons. it is a sign of the time. So our Instagram live chats with coaches, athletic directors, strength and conditioning coaches, and athletes, it's all been about return to play or about the challenges of COVID-19. And as people come back to sport, our conversation on Instagram is going to change, right? So Instagram is a nice place to visit and join us. And there have been some great talks over the last couple of months, and thoroughly enjoying that. So we're offering some additional content on Instagram, stories, posts. Dr. J's been taking on podcasts. He's been doing a great job. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Play, Google Play, and Anchor. There are posts on Facebook and on Twitter. So we're trying to engage our users, people in sport. And a big focus of ours over the last few months is just giving back. As people in sport and as former athletes, we know how challenging it is. So we just want to give back as much as possible and trying to be as creative as possible to give back to our user base, but also all these additional people who have been joining us in sport.
So Peter, we have one question that was sent
Okay.
to me in the private box, and it asks, is there a size limit to your team?
Yeah, so there's not, great question. There's not a limit per se. We right now have it at 100. So I guess we have a limit. It's at 100, but it's based on the needs of the organization and team. So we can increase it higher than 100, but we often have 100 as a starting point. And then, but there are teams that are less than 100 as well. So right now at 100, we can increase it if necessary. So it just depends on the needs of the group. The reason why we chose 100 is it becomes a little bit challenging after 100. So just organizations that have, let's just take a soccer or football organization, they might have under 18, under 17, under 16, under 15. They could have a pro academy. And at times we can put them under one. So the ABC soccer group with all these sub teams, or if it becomes too much and it's a little bit hard to navigate, we'll have possibly a U17 separate team dashboard, a U16 separate U16. So it is at 100. We like to have conversations with people to see what their thoughts are and how they're going to use it. So yeah, anywhere between 2 to 100, and if necessary, we can go above 100.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just some additional pieces. So this is Jay and I are our email addresses. So if you have questions, mine's peter@headsetsports.com. Jay's is jay@headsetsports.com. You can also email Headset at info@headsetsports.com. And then you can find a lot more information on Headset through our webpage, so www.headsetsports.com. And then also you can find us on the Apple Store for our app and on Google Play. So the easiest way is just to put in the search Headset Sports, and you can download it from there. And then in conclusion, if you are interested, please get a hold of us. But if you are an athlete, if you are someone who's interested in using the individual aspect of Headset, we are giving a 25% discount for people during this challenging time. So we have a discount code. So as you are registering for Headset in the registration, it's the third page, you can put in RTP25 to receive a 25% discount code. And then finally, we have, if you want to be able to get a hold of us for the team dashboard and for various proposals, please feel free to get a hold of us directly. And then we'll be able to work with you and your team members, coaches, athletes to get you set up through that team dashboard.
Feel free to even check out our podcasts, and also Thursdays at 1 o'clock my time, which is Pacific Coast, 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can check out Peter on his Instagram lives, and he does a fantastic job, and every week seems to land an incredible guest where great dialogue go back and forth from athletes, coaches, program directors, skills coaches that specialize in specific sports. Some of the guests that we've had over the past few months have been incredible, and the insight that they've been able to provide some of our listeners and resources they've been able to provide our listeners have been absolutely incredible. So that's Thursdays, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Our podcasts that are out, you can hear them on Spotify, iTunes. It's Headset Sports. Um, Feel free to check us out. Feel free to come aboard and listen to what we have going on with our guests, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to some of you a little bit more as well. So if any of you have questions, please let us know, and thank you again for being here today.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, stay tuned. We'll be sending out everyone a recording of this just for your records. We'll be getting a hold of people in the near future for our part 2 of this webinar series, and we'll just continue the conversation going through the webinar. But again, if you have questions for us, feel free to send an email to Jay or I directly, or through our info@Headset Sports email address. Jay, thanks. Awesome. Always a pleasure. Everyone, thank you so much. We will see you all soon, and have a good day.